Welcome to the Spaghetti Wall, the show where we throw big ideas at the wall of life and see what sticks. We're here to talk about mental health, happiness, and what really means to live well in a world that often feels like it's spinning out of control. Whether you're surviving, thriving, or somewhere in between, this podcast is your weekly dose of honest conversations, real tools, and surprising truths. I'm Jason Wilcox, a licensed clinical social worker. Let's dive in.
This is a real play in which a couple meets with Jason to discuss real issues in their relationship. However, the names and faces have been changed, and some segments have been removed for the couple's privacy.
Cool. Well, there's a couple different ways that I start these sessions, and I'm going to kind of leave it up to you what you feel is best. So either we can start by just kind of jumping into the concepts and then looking at how do we apply them into a situation that might be bothering you guys, or we can jump right into a situation that you might have struggled with, and we'll talk about how the concepts apply within that situation and talk about the concepts. You have a preference?
Let's learn by doing.
Okay. What situation do you have in mind then?
One that has recently come up that we've been talking about a bit is where I find myself becoming increasingly frustrated and become angry when a situation, I find myself feeling increasingly frustrated when a situation comes up that Ethel starts telling me about what I perceive to be her experience of something. But instead of kind of explaining to me her experience and the feelings and what she begins, which is okay at first, telling me what happened, and as I attempt to kind of listen to and connect with her about what's upsetting her or bothering her, something that I did or that happened that I was involved in, either way, that the part where I start to feel frustrated is it becomes more of her telling me how it happened and what it was, and even to the extent of what my intent was, what I was thinking, like malicious or malevolent intent. And that's where I start to feel increasingly frustrated and actually start to pull away and get disconnected, and I feel angry. And so we would kind of try to talk about it. Sometimes in the heat of that moment, that distinction gets really difficult. And I want to connect and stay connected, but at the same time, when it starts to feel aggressive to me or insistent that this is what actually happened, I'm like, who are you talking about? That's I want to hear your experience, but telling me that that's exactly what happened and then trying to drill into me about why I did it that way or what I was thinking. I can't speak to those things because that's not me. So then I get angry, or I find myself getting increasingly angry and short, and I want connection.
So common thing that happens within relationships, and it can be really hard to be in that moment for sure when it's not true to you, right? When it's not your truth, it can be very disconnecting. Do you want to add some, Ethel?
Yes, because we've discussed it. I think at good length between us. And for me, there's this thing that brushes up against it where I'm not necessarily considered the best historian. So my recall is not necessarily always that great, but I have very strong feelings. And so when I can recall my feelings, I guess I realize as we're speaking this out loud that I thought I had some deeper resolution around it, but the thing that comes up for me when there's like a conflict around this is that to me my feelings are what happened. And so it's difficult to separate fact from feelings that feel very real. And I know that the feelings or just everything that I am can paint situations in a particular way. So I do try to give him the benefit of the doubt, but what happens for me internally is that then I end up struggling with feeling like, am I crazy? because he's telling me this is what happened. And I'm saying, no, this is what happened. How dare you? And that's like a really big thing for me, I think, the crazy part, because it's just a childhood thing where we used to have an aunt that apparently went crazy.
Mm.
And so, the thing was always like, don't be like this aunt. Like, you don't want to end up crazy like that. You don't want to be like that. Um, and so when he tells me like, oh, well, I get what you're feeling, but like what you're feeling isn't necessarily what actually happened. And then I put up the posture of, oh, like we're going at it. Like I'm not moving, because if I'm moving, then it means you're right and I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, then I'm crazy. So that's kind of what's happening for me whenever we hit this particular situation.
Your truth all of a sudden is challenged, and that feels very alarming.
Yeah.
That's doesn't feel good when that happens. Well, it's a perfect example of some of the stuff I kind of want to go over and show you how it works within this situation. And as I kind of go into this, if you think of a specific moment and have real specific details around it, that helps a lot. But let me give you a couple things. One of them might be helpful, may not for what you're describing, but it's where I always like to make sure we start. So, first thing to always make sure to understand is the skill, what we call the pause. Okay, the pause, it's not a, I'm going to disconnect from you and hurt you. It's not a, I'm going to give you silent treatment. It's not a, I'm going to run from this. It's not any of those things. The pause, what it is, it's saying one of us or both of us have hit a point where we can't communicate in a healthy way. So you just say, let's pause. Even better yet, if you guys take time to just talk about how do we want to call a pause, can be even better. So if you take time to go, what would be a way we want to call a pause? I got some clients who come up with a really funny way to do it, and it kind of lightens the moment when they're both tense. And I got other clients that just literally take my verbiage and say, pause. Worthwhile to talk about if you get a chance before you get in a tough moment. But the pause, what you're doing is it's just the beginning of a formula. One, when you get in these kind of moments like you're talking about, your frontal lobe's going to want to shut down. So it's not operating any longer. Your frontal lobe, do you guys know what that section of the brain does?
Executive function, kind of what we think of as our probably what we most identify with, the way I'm thinking and
Right.
uh,
So your impulse control, your reasoning, cognitive processing, it's shot. Right. So the brain moves to a different side of the brain that's the fight or flight. So now it's in reactive mode, and you're not going to think as clearly as you normally can. So that's just number one on why I take a pause. You take a pause, you go breathe, you disconnect from the situation a little bit, not completely. But there's more to it than that, because the other components you're looking for in the pause is to find the negative core belief that's in play. Because if either or both of you are feeling the way you're expressing, there's a negative core belief that's in play. And two is so that when you process through the negative core belief, you get to empathy. Empathy is the goal. And when you get there, it makes the conversation so much easier. Sometimes it's hard to get to the negative core belief. And if it is, even finding a way to get to empathy still can help. Let me give you guys an example of something. If you look at this book here, if I was blind, what do you see? Describe it for me.
I see elongated shapes that are hollow down the center, like if you're familiar with a tube, if you've ever held a straw or a hose, something that water could flow through, but instead of being very long, in segments like the length of your finger or a little like your littlest finger, with some also with some text on there as well.
I would describe it as a hard cover book with the word pasta on it. And it's about a collection of pastas, but the cover has a zoomed in image of pasta that is circular. It looks like straws that have been cut at 45-degree angles on both sides.
The overall color of the is warm oranges, yellows.
Now, if this was a really important topic to you guys, kind of like what you brought up earlier about what is truth, what is feeling, and all of those things, if this was really important to you, and I said, well, you're partially right. There are some oranges and yellows. It is a book about pasta, and it is a hardcover book. But everything else you said is wrong, and that does not exist. How would you feel?
I would be like, was this a test? Like, I thought I would think you're joking.
Yeah, but if I was serious and I said you're wrong.
I would excuse myself from you.
Yeah, why? Why would you excuse yourself?
Because to me, it would seem like, what's the point of arguing with someone who's so staunch on something that's very obviously not the case?
Right. But if I say all that is there is a hardback covered book about pasta with the title Pasta, does have orange and yellows, but it's a description of the book with a barcode, and that's actually what's there because that's all I see. So then the question is, who's right? So we often, in most relationships, we get in these spots where we have two different realities, and it turns into an argument, similar to what you guys are talking about. And the issue is we see something differently from two different sides. So our realities are actually both our realities. Is when we can stop for a moment and look at the whole thing, is where we're going to get to a place that things are going to get a little more functional. The goal is to say not one side is the right side. The goal is to say we both have truths. So if it's not whose is true, it's what do we do with these two truths? The goal is to say, okay, we're both right. So now what? If Ethel, you experienced Luke as being malicious, it's okay. So if that's your truth, then it would be going to Luke going, okay, I hear that when I did that, that for you equates that I was doing something malicious and on purpose. That's your side of the book. And I hear that. And on my side of the book, when I did X, Y, and Z, I see how that can be felt as malicious. Here's what the intention was behind it. So if we're both right, then we just look at the fact that there's something that happened in the middle that made us both right, and that's okay. Either someone misunderstood, or someone misspoke, or a combination of both. These things happen. It's, again, very human. So if we're both right, then we just look at, okay, and does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense.
So when either of you are experiencing something different than the other, it's still just going, okay, I hear you and I see that, and I see how that is true. And here's where I was at. If you're the one that spoke or did an action, use it as a chance to clarify. Here's where my intentions were. Here's what I meant to say.
What would be a helpful tool? Because I think we both want to get to that afterwards when things calm, which probably the pause would be a helpful thing. We've talked about needing that, recognizing that type of thing, because in the heat of that moment, it's very difficult to, when Ethel will ask me, so then what was your intent? And I have that moment to opportunity to clarify. And then I clarify, it's not believed.
So what you're looking for at that moment is you're looking for the negative core belief. So let's talk about what that is real quick. In general, do you guys know what core beliefs are?
Probably have some good
Like,
guesses, but
yeah, I would say mine are guesses too, probably.
So a core belief is kind of like it's in the computer you have like your main core operating programs that if you mess with them, the whole thing's going to break,
Yeah.
yeah.
right? And if you go try to mess with it, it's going to pull up a password that you got to bypass and all that stuff, right? Saying you don't want to do this. Are you sure? Core beliefs are like that. So your brain, it's some of its main functions is for safety, survival, and reproduction, but that's not what we're talking about this moment. So if it's about survival and safety, then it's looking at how do I create things in the brain for you to act fast, to stay safe. Because if you have a little gray triangle coming at you in the ocean that's on the top of the surface, what do?
Run.
Because you immediately fill in the blank, right?
Yep.
You assume a shark. So your brain at some point when you're starting to grow, it went, oh crap, I'm mortal. I can die and I can be harmed. Right? That's a core belief. It's important to have. It helps you stay alive. Now that core belief starts building a bunch of others around it to help you function. So that when you see a gray triangle, you don't go, what is that gray triangle? And get all curious about it. Instead, you get out of there so you stay alive. So your mind has a bunch of different core beliefs. Now, as you go through life, between conditioning, chemical imbalances, and trauma, your brain starts creating some negative core beliefs. Now, personally, I don't even like that term. I don't like negative core beliefs because I think that actually feeds into what the negative core belief does in general. I would more just call it like a maladaptive filter. It's kind of like getting a house alarm put on your house that goes off every time a mosquito comes in.
The original intention was good.
Original intention, original function, all great, but it's giving you information that's not helpful,
At least not anymore. Maybe it was at one point.
right? So it gives you information when something happens, right? Mosquito comes in, that's called the trigger. Trigger happens, alarm goes off. Now, the negative core belief is now filtering everything else that happens, saying alarm, 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 alarm while that mosquito's there. Whereas the human in the house is going to go crazy because they can't figure out why the alarm's going off. With the negative core belief, it's maladaptive in that way, but it's always filtering first off. All of your core beliefs, the brain is constantly trying to prove that they're right for your survival. So it's grabbing information every day, all the time, saying, see right, and see I'm right, see I'm right, see I'm right. Strengthening it, it's growing it, making sure that it is effective for you. So negative core beliefs do the same. It's always looking for things in the environment to prove it's right. Negative core beliefs, though, they don't feel good when they get really loud, when they get reactive and activated. So even though they're slightly filtering all the time, when they get triggered, they get really loud. And all of a sudden, that negative core belief, when it's going off really loud in your mind, it's very painful. So since it's so painful, the brain doesn't like it there. So the brain says, I need to put this somewhere. So then the brain either projects it onto your partner, which is very common, or it'll project it on yourself. And that's why I like to refer to it as almost like the demon, almost thinking of it as a third party here. And that little demon says, you're not good enough, or whatever it is, or you're not lovable. So there you are. You have a negative core belief of you're not lovable. Your partner comes home one day feeling sick, has a headache. It's been a long, stressful day. They walk through the door, take their shoes off, throw their coat down, walk straight to the bed and go to sleep. That partner that's standing there sees this happen that has a negative core belief of I'm unlovable, just got triggered. That trigger, that moment, the behavior that happened, negative core belief just grabbed it to prove it's right and strengthen itself and caused you to have this deep down belief of, see, I'm not lovable. See, my husband, my wife doesn't love me. So now that partner goes in and then confronts him, possibly saying, see, you don't even love me. Didn't even say hi, didn't kiss me, didn't do anything when you came in. The other partner's like, what are you talking about? I do love you. Now, here's why the pause is so important. It's because in that moment, the negative core belief is so loud saying you aren't lovable that even if that partner says, no, I do, I love you to death, what they hear through the filter is, now they're placating me. They don't really love me because the negative core belief is that loud. It's kind of like a Google translator. If you think about a Google translator, right? You speak one language into it and then it translates. So it's all of a sudden this broken translator comes up and one person says, I love you so much. And it filters through and all they hear is, huh, I don't really love you, but I got to say it to make you feel happy so you'll leave me alone. And that's all they hear because of the filter. So if you think back to the book, this is why everybody's truth is their truth, and it is truth. Not meaning that someone did do something maliciously or not maliciously, but that is what the person experienced, and that is their truth, and that is what it was. So the goal is to get to the part of the conversation of going, okay, that's where you're at, that's where I'm at. Here's what I'd like to clarify. That's not true. It's awesome. Okay, you're cool. But in that moment when you're triggered, the negative core belief is out. That filter, that demon yelling at you, see you're not lovable, see you're not lovable. So everything's getting filtered that way. If you push that way, you can't hear each other. So if you stay in that moment, like you were bringing up earlier, Luke, if you stay in that moment, you can't even hear each other anymore. Everything is filtered. So the best thing you can do is pause. Just pause the conversation. Say, you know what?
Yeah.
I see we're in a bad spot. Let's pause. Go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's moments where I've commented, I'm like, I feel like I could step out of the room and anybody could fill my shoes because it's not me that is in this thing that's arising at that particular moment. There have been other times where we've actually gotten good at what you're referring to as a pause. But yeah, in some of this is probably a fresh one that seems to be touching on some of those pieces as you're identifying as a core negative belief.
Yeah, the filter. It's hard though, because again, the brain does not want you to let go of this. The brain says this is critical information, a critical function that has to stay in place. So in that moment, it's doing multiple functions. It's one, proving it's right by lying to you. If it projects it outwards, it's now accurate according to the mind. And this is all happening deep down in the mind, so you don't hear it, you don't see it, it's just happening. So it's trying to prove itself, it's strengthening itself, it's painful, but again, it has to go somewhere, so it puts it out on the other person normally. So now that's what you're experiencing because it's that filter that you can't see through anymore. Very hard to deal with in the moment. That's why I encourage couples, just take the pause. The pause can feel very painful in those moments because when you call the pause, that is also being filtered. So it can feel very painful, but as you get better at the skill, it gets easier. Once you call the pause, the goal, the whole purpose of one is calm down, right? Do breathing, do mindfulness, do meditation, whatever, take a walk, do something to cool down. The mind is going to keep wanting to project. It's going to keep wanting to go, oh, Luke, or oh, Ethel. It's going to want to keep the projection happening. The goal is to stop the lie, stop the brain from lying to you, and go, nope, what is my negative core belief saying? If I'm experiencing this and feeling this way, right, I'm feeling really frustrated because my world was that Luke was doing something menacing, or my whole world was Ethel keeps telling me what my feelings are that weren't accurate. If you're experiencing that, it means you're filtering, which means the negative core belief is taking that information and saying something negative about you, and your brain does not want you to hear that. So if you shift and use skills that we'll go throughout the sessions, and you use those skills to shift what you're doing inside your mind, you'll actually be able to find the negative core belief. You'll be able to get it out of there, and then you can hear the other person.
Yeah, those steps, good that they're obviously, very powerful, but simple, because in those moments, simple is more likely to be remembered and actionable, to of that incessant, especially when those maladaptive, as you described, maladaptive filters, like they're obviously, thinking to my own experiences that aren't necessarily relevant to this one that we've been talking about now, but just how like they're there trying to fill something that I need, and that sense of empty or whatever it was is like trying to serve me, and holy cow, it can be so overwhelming in that moment. And we both, yeah, are at that pause to help us kind of make sure that we get back in touch with our intention, which is to communicate with each other.
Because you guys both love each other. You both want a great, strong relationship and be there for each other. But the second the negative core belief comes out, it's going to alter everything, right? I don't know if you guys have done virtual reality, but it's something that I often compare to this, that when I'm in that virtual reality, my eyes are lying to me, but it
Everything.
feels so real. I feel like I'm in that space because I can see it. The second I take that thing off, can now see clearly and actually operate in my surroundings, whereas I can't if I keep the virtual reality on. I'm going to trip over things. It's going to be deceiving me. That's the same thing with that negative core belief. It will feel so real. And there's lots of times you guys will probably experience this as you go through sessions, but there's lots of times couples when we find them and highlight them in really hard moments, they'll even argue back saying, no, that is not a negative core belief. And we'll process, and then all of a sudden they'll be like, oh my gosh, it was a negative core belief.
One of the things that I'm reminded of when I've tried to investigate within myself, like, why am I coming at this so viciously? Like, because sometimes it feels like a dog with a bone for me, where I can outwardly observe that maybe I am being irrational. And then immediately there's this, like, it feels like such a deep piece of my persona that just comes through and is like, no, no. If you give in, you are betraying yourself. And there have been moments where, like, after we have like some sort of disagreement or discussion, especially around this particular piece, where I want to be resolved just because it feels so heavy, and I'm just like, ugh, I just want us to resolve this. But I have come back later and I have found that there's like resentment then that begins to grow because it starts to feel like I am actually betraying like a deeper truth within myself. Granted, I think I have enough of an observation of this piece now that I'm like, oh, it's not the nicest of pieces. Like, is it really something that I want to, viciously keep defending? Like, I can see when I picked this up how it was necessary to have this, that there was a time in my life lived experience that this piece was doing its best to keep me sane. But now it feels like there have been moments where when I've told Luke, I actually don't feel like I know you that well because I've painted you with so much of my paint. Like that it makes it sometimes it's actually frustrating to hear him say like that's not me, because now I'm at a point where I'm like, well, fudge, I don't actually know you that well then. And that sucks because we've been together 12 years now, 12, 13 years. And so yeah, the core pieces for me, I jokingly want to ask like how do you kill them? But I do feel like there's I don't know, I feel like I'm at a point where I'd like to be okay with those leaving because I'm just not in the same circumstances that I was in when they came into existence. But they keep painting things as if I was still in that fight or flight situation, but I'm not anymore. And I can tell that they're like very deeply rooted, and they're very cunning too, because like sometimes it really does feel like, no, if I were to release this thing, whatever it is, then I'm betraying myself, and then I'm a weak woman, or whatever other like story comes along from that. But ultimately at the core, a breaking of myself, and then he wins and I always lose. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of really great things you said there that are actually really helpful to kind of untangle what's happening. One, you talked about how you being irrational or not irrational, how the mind either fights for that or fights against that. You also talked about if that for you, if you don't win or overcome whatever this is, that you're weak. These are all breadcrumb trails. So breadcrumb trails that lead you to a negative core belief, and sometimes it is the negative core belief. So there's a potential that I'm weak, I'm irrational are both negative core beliefs that are getting tangled up in this. Anytime you find that you're judging your partner or you're judging yourself, is guaranteed that is a breadcrumb trail. If you feel or think a judgment or state it, use it, because that will help you lead back to the negative core belief. Getting rid of the negative core beliefs, it's very, very difficult to get rid of them if you don't know what they are. It's like shooting in the dark if you don't know what the little demon's saying.
A lot of collateral damage.
Yeah. The goal is to recognize no matter what, these situations never equate that you're irrational. The idea that anything from the situation, semi or even somewhat or all does equate that you're irrational would be fueled by a negative core belief. Anything from the situation, no matter what the outcome, saying that you would be weak would be a negative core belief. That's the lie. Both of those are lies the brain is telling you. Because if you could imagine, there's a group of 3 friends, okay? One friend is saying to the other friend, well, I heard you tell me that you hate me. And the other friend's like, I never said that I hate you. And somehow we're able to rewind time and we go backwards and we see that friend 1 is standing by the wall with her other friend, friend 3, and friend 2 isn't looking at them. And friend 3 goes, I hate you. Friend 2 turns around and says, what did you call me, friend 1? Friend 1 says, I didn't say anything. And the other one somehow, whether it's through a microphone or something, keeps saying, she hates you, 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 she hates you. Would this be irrational if she felt like she was being said that she's hated?
Yeah.
It's not irrational for you either, because you have a negative core belief that is giving you a message in your mind. Again, the brain treats this as reality, doesn't know the difference. So it's very rational to be in a moment when a negative core belief is loud and painful, to be that is the experience. What it makes it is it makes it a truth to the experience, and very rational to feel so intense by it. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's for sure your negative core beliefs in that moment or not, but it sure started sounding like I'm weak, I'm irrational, or two of them potentially.
Yeah.
So asking some questions around the situation can help you find what it is exactly. And you kind of were doing it, if you don't mind me picking it apart just for a moment, Ethel.
No, not at all.
So you were mentioning with Luke that in your mind, if you end up being wrong on everything, what does that make you?
Less than. Like dumb.
Okay. So if you're wrong on all the stuff in this argument, you're dumb.
Yeah. When I've followed that trail, it's like if I'm right and he's always right, how long will it be before he gets tired of having a partner who's dumber than him, who isn't like mentally challenging him or like stimulating enough? And I already know that I have like self-esteem issues. So I kind of feel like, well, if I'm not that pretty and I'm not that smart and I'm always wrong, like then why would he stay here?
So your questions are great questions, and your brain's using them to actually support your negative core belief. Do you see how what it did is it asked beautiful questions and then immediately projected it to Luke?
Yeah.
So remember, when you process this, you're always trying to get it to stop the projection. What you're trying to do is see the projection. It's literally like your glasses that you're wearing there are the virtual reality, and Luke comes along and flips the switch on the virtual reality. Now, there's nothing wrong with him flipping the switch on the virtual reality, right? Neither right, neither wrong. He just did. That's kind of like a trigger. So he just hit the trigger. Now it's on. As soon as the battery runs out and it turns off, you're going to see everything again.
Yeah.
But in that moment, all you saw was what you saw.
Yeah.
So it's true. What you saw doesn't mean like the malicious thing that was brought up earlier. Doesn't mean that Luke did something maliciously. What it does mean is that Luke did something that created a trigger that now turned the virtual reality on. That's why you experienced what you experienced. It doesn't mean Luke did something wrong. It doesn't mean Luke did something right. It just is something. So, to your question, since they're such beautiful questions, if you try to look at what is the projection, if you're all of those things, okay, follow the line. So if you're not mentally challenging, you're not smart, and you're not pretty, what does that make you?
A leech.
Okay. If you're a leech, then what?
Then I suck. I'm worthless.
That sounds like a negative core belief. Do you see how we moved away from the projection and moved into what is it projecting?
Yes.
Imagine for a moment, this is why a specific situation could be a little bit better. And it's okay if you don't share it, but can you think of a specific situation where you're feeling those things?
Yeah.
Okay. Now take for a moment, I'm going to take you through an activity here. Most of the time it works for people, but it does not work for everyone. So if it doesn't work, it's okay.
Okay.
Who's someone you love dearly and you look at them and you think, man, they're really wise and they're really smart and they're really pretty.
Okay.
Got someone?
Mhm.
What if they came to you tomorrow and they start telling you a story about the relationship? By the time they're done telling you this story, it is almost detail by detail the exact same thing that happened with you and Luke.
Hmm.
Would you see her as not pretty and not wise? And would you see her as worthless?
No,
How would you see her?
I would see her as a great person with some misunderstandings about herself and probably what's happening.
So she would still be pretty.
Yep.
She still
Mhm.
would be wise.
Yeah.
She'd still be worth everything.
Yeah.
Now, can you see yourself?
Yeah. It's hard. But yeah, I get it.
You get it or you
Mentally.
see it? There's a difference. Difference between frontal lobe cognitively understanding the concept, and there's a difference between the actual negative core belief being seen through. One will resonate through your whole body. The other will just be, I get the formula.
I feel like I get the formula. There's a very there's like a block that I feel when I try to then insert myself into that visualization. Like the feelings of love flow when I envision the person you asked me to envision,
Mm-hmm.
but then when I put myself in there, all of a sudden it's like, stop everything. Wrong. Something's wrong here. And it's I don't feel the same compassion flow for myself as I can for other people.
So that's your brain putting up a protective mechanism to protect the negative core belief. So there's a few reasons why that happens. That's why I always start with this activity. There's either your brain has gone through a traumatic event in your past that has imprinted it pretty deeply. So normally there's some trauma processing that needs to happen to work through that. Or that the conditioning of the negative core belief and or the conditioning of that negative core belief, you've had enough experiences where it's projected outwards and grabbed so many different moments that it's like it has a stockpile like a dragon with its gold, right? And it's
Yeah.
just sitting on it going, you can do that activity all you want, but look at this. You got nothing. And all they are is a big pile of lies, though. And so often, what can be helpful is either best case scenario is an individual therapist can dig a lot deeper than in couples counseling and kind of clear that out. And in couples counseling, we might be able to look at those here and there and kind of see what's happening and kind of clear them out. But what's really cool is in therapy, if you go back to these things, right, when we go to try to clear the negative core belief and it doesn't budge like what just happened, to follow the trail further and go, okay, brain, what do you got on me? And let it go where it needs to go. Does it go back to a trauma? Does it go back to a few situations that says, psh, that's garbage because look what I got? The reality is if you can go back to those situations using some of the techniques, you're actually going to be able to see those situations for what they really are. And you'll see that your brain's actually been lying to you about those moments all these years, which has given fuel to the negative core belief to make it feel so strong. Because the reality is how you saw your friend or family
Yeah.
member, that's the truth about you.
Yeah. Definitely hitting here.
Yes, that's okay though. We got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because here's the thing, Luke, if you can't answer honestly, then just plead the fifth here. But rarely is that the case. Is Ethel beautiful to you?
Yes.
Is she smart?
Yes.
Is she mentally stimulating?
Very.
Do you love her with all your heart?
Extraordinary. Yes.
Is she worth everything to you?
Yes.
Now you hear the truth. The goal is not to let the negative core belief throw that away.
Yeah.
And every time it comes out and starts saying those things, that's the lie. That's the filter.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And vice versa, Luke. When you're experiencing Ethel in those moments, you got to filter. The question is, what is the filter? What is it saying? And how do you get rid of it? Because if you see what's really happening for Ethel in those moments, you're only going to feel compassion. You're going to feel empathy because it's going to feel very painful what's happening inside of her. And vice versa, Ethel, if Luke's in that moment and feeling that intense, whatever it is that's saying whatever is happening is going to feel intense. It's not going to feel good.
Yeah.
Hence, again, why we go back to step one, pause. What questions, concerns, thoughts do you have about this formula?
No, I don't have any questions. You were very thorough. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any questions either. I like some of the analogies, some of the metaphor pieces.
So
Yeah.
let me throw, oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Luke.
Oh, those are, I'm just sitting with a few of them. I had already earlier as you were guiding Ethel, through some of those reflections. self-reflection, introspection components, kind of seeing if I could feel into a few of those moments of what might be the maladaptive filter that comes out in those moments where I do find myself, because I'm there and I feel that compassion. And then there's a certain moment where I suddenly turn into that knight and I feel like I'm holding a shield and the dragon is like, the fire is blazing and I'm like, I can't pull out anything tender right now. It's just going to be scorched. Because maybe this is more of a personal spiritual belief. I'd like to put down that shield anyway. I feel like the flame shouldn't actually harm me if in the greater resolution of this imagery that I'm sort of sitting with, so that even the thinking I need to pull up the shield, like as if that fire is actually going to harm me. Something about that filter for me.
Because you're looking through a virtual reality lens at that point.
Yeah.
When that fire hits, it's not real.
Yeah.
That's the negative core beliefs lie. Try one other thing for me real quick, Ethel, if you're up for it.
Yeah.
So that moment you thought of.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to that moment where you're feeling the most intense and think about Luke's behaviors or what Luke said, and if you put in that Luke loves you, thinks you're worth everything, thinks you're beautiful, smart, mentally stimulating, then what does that moment mean?
It definitely doesn't carry the same weight that it used to. There's a softening around the weight that I attributed to that particular memory, where I can sense now, oh, okay, all these things can be true, and he still does love me and think all these other things and has these feelings towards me. I still don't like it.
Don't have to like it.
But I accept that there's a deeper knowing, or not even just an understanding that I was fighting before.
It pushes you more to empathy, yeah?
Yes.
Another skill we talk about in a future session is how to hold empathy and accountability. So if a partner was yelling at somebody, just because you can feel empathy and remove the negative core belief and not feel reactive in that moment, it doesn't mean we still don't talk about not yelling anymore. Not saying you yelled, Luke, just an example. Another example I sometimes give is just think about a little child, right? If you got a little toddler that starts screaming at you, do you feel the same way as if your partner was behaving the way they're behaving?
No.
Right. Because you have no negative filter in that moment.
Yeah.
Instead, you just see it for what it is, which is a child trying to express, trying to find a way to engage in a way that's not helpful. Well, was this helpful? Is there any questions, concerns?
It was very helpful. I don't have any questions right now.
Yeah, I feel it was helpful.